good. Vanessa was like, watching those, does it make you want to run one of those races? I was like, yeah, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. Anything where at the checkpoint, right, your toenails are falling off, I'm like, I'm out, right? I'm out. Is there a buffet version of that? Where you just go, right? Thank you. Yes, we're going to start that sport. Hey, speaking of buffets, I like to do this around Christmas each year. We'd like a little participation if you're new to city life, so I'm going to walk around in just a minute. But what was your favorite bite over Christmas? Like a bite that you took and you were like, oh, that was so. I always start on this side. I'm going to start on this side over here. I heard Jamal too. So Jamal, what was your favorite bite? Oxtail. Okay, I wasn't expecting that. Should we just stop now? Can anybody beat oxtail, right? Favorite bite. Did you have a favorite bite, Cannon? What was your favorite bite?
We had homemade donuts.
Okay. All right. Anybody over here a favorite? Strawberry cheesecake. Now, was it strawberry topping on a regular cheesecake, or was it was, yes. Oh, yeah. Come on. Yes. Anybody else? Brussels sprouts. Really? Father, we just pray for Christina right now in Jesus' name. Give this woman some pie. Brussels sprouts. All right. To each his own. Anybody? Favorite bite? Favorite bite back here in the corner? Empanadas? Oh, okay. All right. Empanadas. Anybody back here? Favorite bites? Christmas cookies. All of them, right? Just all the variety. The tower that has different. Yes. Anybody in the middle? Favorite bites? I'm coming to the other side. Yes? Crab soup. Did you make it? Yes, of course you did. Yes. Favorite bites? Favorite bites? Anybody? Say that again. Berry pie. Berry pie. Yes. I'm all the pies. Yeah, I don't need the cake. Just give me all the pies. Peach cobbler. Yeah. Is it warm or cold? Warm. And is it with or with ice cream? With ice cream. Thank you. Okay, this is another important question. If it's with ice cream, should it be in a bowl with a spoon, or do you eat it on a plate with a fork? Yeah. Any way it comes to me, I'm going to consume it. Now, if it's ice cream, it automatically defaults to a bowl and a spoon. Thank you. Yes. Anybody? Deviled eggs. Yes. Of course, we had the deviled eggs. Yes. Victor's ribs. Yes. And that's Victor. Yeah. Yes. Now, are they smoked, grilled? How do you do them? Smoked, low, and slow. Yes, that should be a T-shirt. Okay, a combo bite of macaroni and cheese with candied yams. That's very strategic, isn't it? The scoop of this and a little of that. Yes. Anybody else? Stan, I saw your hand come up. Mincemeat pie. I don't know if I've ever had mincemeat pie. Okay. All right. Have you ever had mincemeat pie? We don't need it, Vanessa said. That means I'm not going to have it. People are like, you could make it. And I'm like, then you don't know me. That's my answer. Oh, goodness. Isn't that great? You heard some things and be like, okay, I want to try that. It reminds me, though, as we think about that bite, how it made you feel, that there are desires that are deep inside of us that are akin to food. Meaning that bite that you had that created that feeling in you of deliciousness, that it makes you want to go back for more. There are other appetites that are inside of us that are like food, but for the soul. And that when you experience them, that something inside of you feels satisfied. And we feel a deep sense of fulfillment. And I would say that part of this series that we're in is teaching us and reminding us that meaning is one of those desires. To experience meaningful things in this life is one of those appetites that every human being has. Every single one of us has this desire. You might not have a desire for oxtails or mincemeat pie. You with me? Right? There are preferences based on your palate. But your soul, every single human being, there's something inside of you that is hungry and thirsty for meaning, for meaningful moments in this life. This is going to come up on the screen. This word meaningful, this study that we're doing in Ecclesiastes, it means this. It means having a serious, important, or useful quality or purpose, making our lives rich and fulfilling. If I were to think of some synonyms, they would be words like this: significant, important, consequential, worthwhile, deep, earnest, and enriching. There is something inside of me and something inside of you that wants to have experiences in this life that are described by those kinds of words. And once we taste of it, we want it again and again and again and again. And you should want those things. And God created you with that capacity, and He wants you to find it. So part of this series is us saying together, especially moving into 2026, is how about we build a life that's in search for meaning? How about we chase after, of all the things you've chased after in 2025, how about we put chasing after meaningful moments a greater priority in 2026? Life's a zero-sum game. There might be some things that you've got to stop chasing, some things that you've got to stop hyperfixating on, and let the appetite of your soul for good things that God has for you begin to come to the forefront. We want to be a church that teaches you how to do it. It's one of the reasons why we picked Ecclesiastes for this series for Christmas that's going to also take us much into January. The word Ecclesiastes in the Hebrew, right, because Ecclesiastes is in the Old Testament. When it was originally written, the Hebrew word for Ecclesiastes is koheleth, and literally it means teacher. So this book is about teaching, is to teach us about meaning. And then when scholars eventually translated the Old Testament from Hebrew to Greek, the Greek equivalent for koheleth is, yes, you guessed, Ecclesiastes, which literally means one who speaks to the assembly, or a preacher, a teacher. Which reminds me and the leaders of this church that we have a sacred responsibility to guide this congregation in our search for meaning in this life. That every church has a sacred duty. Every church has been assigned by God many purposes, and some are unique to that church. But all of us share in this, that churches should be a place when you go there that you find yourself learning about how to find meaning in this life. Regardless of what you're facing. Regardless of the hardships that you might be, whether your finish line is a tragedy or whether your finish line is one of your greatest accomplishments in life, that church should be a place where people are helping you to find meaning in the midst of whatever season is yours today. This is one of the reasons why every person, I would say, needs a church to call home. The measure of your meaning is directly related to how relationally connected you are to a church family who are chasing after meaning in this life. Let me read it again. It's on the screen. This is one of the reasons every person needs a church to call home. The measure of your meaning is directly related to how relationally connected you are to a church family who are chasing after a meaningful life. Why is that? It's because we learn from each other. It's because there are things in this life that are going to be meaningful for you that maybe you've not yet discovered, but this person over here has discovered, and that through this friendship, you realize that you need that meaning in your life. And then your life is supposed to be a gift to other people. That there are things in this life that you have discovered that are meaningful that other people have not yet experienced. And then through your friendship, you begin to share your life with them. And then all of a sudden they begin to experience meaning. Community has an amplification impact, a multiplication impact on our search for meaning. And I would argue that even if that experience of meaning isn't for you, you begin to experience meaning by watching a friend find it for themselves. Something inside of you you get excited. When you're at the finish line, you didn't run the race, but you get excited because you see your friend having done it. We were at the finish line, the final finish line, not one of the checkpoints. There was a bunch of us. Some of you came out to support Derek from RC, and we're cheering so loud. And there was a young man right in front of him, and as he crossed the finish line, he saw us cheering. He thought we were cheering for him. Right? It's like when somebody waves and you think they're waving to you and you wave back, but then you realize they're waving to the person behind you, right? There's that awkwardness. You don't multiply that by about 15, right? And he's like, come on, yeah. And then he realizes, he looks over his shoulder, oh, they're really cheering for this guy behind me. You're in life, that can be your experience, right? There's something inside of you feels full when you celebrate a friend. So I've entitled this message A Meaningful Measure because I wanted to illustrate something for you. This little tablespoon here, I'm saying this is the kind of meaningfulness that is waiting for you in this life if you've never made a vow of devotion to Christ. I'm not saying you can't have meaning apart from God. You can, but it's in small measures. And if that part of you that's hungering and thirsting for meaning in life, if you're only feeding that part of you from that tablespoon, you're going to be hungry and thirsty for your whole life. This next one here, right? This is real. There's a water that's actually called Fred. And I don't even know if they're still in business. I have a couple of bottles in my office where people have found out and about, and then they bring it back. And this one brought back empty. I was like, where's the water from the water bottle? They're like, I was a little thirsty, so this is the empty bottle, right? So this one, I like this one because this is the person who's made a vow of devotion to Christ, but you're living your life as a spiritual orphan. You don't have a church that you call home. That Christianity for you is a me word instead of an us word. You understand what I'm saying? Now there is a measure of meaning that you're going to experience in this life. Of course you are. If you've been born into the family of God, then there's meaning that's waiting for you, but it's less than what it could be. You understand what I'm saying? This is the person who's made a vow of devotion to Christ, that you have a church family that you're relationally invested in. Not just showing up for weekend worship services, but you're relationally invested in that community. This is what you're drinking out of. This is what you're using to satisfy that part of you that's desperate for meaning in this world. And in the book of Ecclesiastes is written to us to remind us that we only get one shot at this life, and we should be chasing after meaning all the days that we have. Which is a little bit confounding because one of the phrases that gets repeated in the book of Ecclesiastes is everything is meaningless. You're like, woohoo, right? The first time you read the book of Ecclesiastes, maybe you thought to yourself, who let this book in the Bible? Why is this even here? And as Derek and Amy already did such an incredible job in the first 2 weeks of this series, laying a foundation for us, and both of them took some time, and I'm going to do it again tonight, to teach us and talk to us about the word that's actually used here for meaningless every time Solomon says everything is meaningless. And so let's look at the verse together. It starts right out of the gate in Ecclesiastes 1:2. Everything is meaningless, says the teacher, right? Completely meaningless. And this word that you find here is actually a word that translates vapor. It's the Hebrew word havel. And it's creating this sense of, if you were to reach for a vapor, it's there, but as soon as you reach for it, it's gone, right? And you're never going to be able to grasp it. One of our traditions at our family during Christmas is that on Christmas Day in the afternoon, all of Vanessa's family comes over. We do this big meal together, but Vanessa always plans all of these really fun games for us, right? And whether you're old like me or whether the youngest kids, right, we all play this game together. One of the games is you have a paper plate on your head and you have to draw a scene without watching. Right, and then when you look at the paper plate, mine just looks like a 4-year-old took a crayon, right, every year, right, and then some people, it's like they were Da Vinci, right, without even having to look. They draw these incredible pictures, and then we did a new game this year. And there's winners and losers, not just at City Life Church, but also at our home, right? So we keep score. There are also prizes. There's also mocking and shaming. This is also part of Christmas in the Michaud household. And so this one of the new games is that we all were in a big circle around our dining room table, and there were all these solo cups that were lined up from one end to the next, but there was one less cup than there were a number of people. And so as we're marching around the table, Vanessa is saying heads, shoulders, knees, and you have to touch whatever she says. But as soon as she says cup, you have to reach for one of the solo cups. You tracking with me? Right? And then one person is inevitably left out, and then the group gets smaller and smaller. And so one of our guests, I'm not making this up, one of our guests, he actually trains CIA officers for the government. You do not want to play a game like this with a person like that, right? And so he teaches them self-defense. He teaches them defensive driving. He teaches them all kinds of things probably that we're not allowed to talk about. His reflexes, it's insane. Because I was out about halfway, and so then I'm watching. He's not even looking at the table, right? I'm trying to cheat when I'm there, right? I'm stopping. Vanessa's like, keep moving, Fred. You can't stop, right? And so I'll take a couple of steps, and I kid you, I'm not kidding you. He doesn't look. He's just looking straight ahead, doing what he says. And then when she says cup, he has a cup in his hand. When my hands are still on my knees, right? Or on my head or my shoulders, right? It's like his hand did not even move. It was the most remarkable thing. And clearly he won the game. Claire made it to the final 3, though. Come on, Claire. All right, yes. Yes. Poets unite, yes. We're pretty certain she just had an angel that was working with her the whole time, just knocking that cup right over to her. I am telling you that story because, right, there are times where in the game, right, you reached for the cup, you thought it was going to be there, but then it was gone. And this is the image that Solomon is creating for us in the book of Ecclesiastes, that you're reaching for meaning, you think it's going to be there, but as soon as you grasp it, it disappears. And then all of a sudden, not only are you left without meaning, but what comes in its place is frustration. And if you keep doing that for too long, eventually despair takes the place of meaning that you were supposed to have. It's interesting that the word for meaningless is not the opposite of meaningful. Have you ever noticed that? Like, we talked about what meaningful means. Meaningful means significant, important, consequential, worthwhile, deep, earnest, enriching. You would think, or I would think, that the word for meaningless, because these words exist in the Hebrew, would have been empty or hollow or vain or trifling or trivial or insignificant, right? Or pointless, right? You would think that the word would be the opposite of what meaningful is, but it's not. It's the word for futile. It's this word vapor. It's talking about your journey to find meaning is never going to be satisfied unless. Let's look at Ecclesiastes 2:17. It says, "So I came to hate life because everything done here under the sun is so troubling, and everything is meaningless, like chasing the wind." See, I think the book of Ecclesiastes is Solomon's, in part, it's his confession to us, and that he is operating as a teacher. The book of Ecclesiastes, many scholars believe that he wrote this when he was in his mid to late 50s, and then also most scholars believe he died in his early 60s. So Solomon is writing this at the end of his life. And I think Ecclesiastes is the reflection of a man who accomplished incredible things in this life and then also wasted much of his life, as he talks about in Ecclesiastes, wasting it chasing after folly. And I think what Solomon is saying to you and to me is he's saying, don't make the same mistakes that I did. At the end of his life, he's challenging us in the middle of our lives that a meaningful life is possible, but only if we spend our lives reaching for the right things. But if you spend your life reaching for the wrong things, or what we're going to talk about mostly tonight, is that if you're reaching for the right things, but you're doing it for the wrong reason, that's also meaningless. I think Solomon here is taking poetry and creative language, and at times he's saying one thing by saying the exact opposite. This incredible literary skill that he has, he's a gifted writer, and so if we're not careful, if you're not understanding the tone in which he's writing this book, you're going to come to all the wrong conclusions. And I think in part, Solomon did it that way on purpose. I think the Holy Spirit inspired him because there's a complexity to this life. Sometimes life feels confusing. Sometimes life feels unfair. Sometimes life feels like I'm trying to do everything right and everything is still going wrong. I think Ecclesiastes is written perfectly to teach us about this journey for meaning. If I were to translate Ecclesiastes 2:17, that we call this the PFT, the Pastor Fred translation. All your efforts in pursuit of a full measure of meaning in this life will fail unless. I think that's what Solomon was saying to us. I think what Solomon was saying to us, everything is meaningless unless. I think there's this subtle creative genius that the Holy Spirit, and maybe only Solomon, who the Bible says is the wisest person to ever live, that only someone like Solomon could have written a book this way. That all throughout the book of Ecclesiastes, if you would learn to insert the word unless over and over and over again, you'll begin to discover what I think God intended you to find in this incredible book. This incredible book. Solomon's cry to us is learn from my mistakes. Somebody say the right things for the wrong reasons. I think this next part of this message is going to be a big aha moment for some of you tonight, for your own life and then for the life of other people that you have observed. The right things for the wrong reasons. Let me read Ecclesiastes 1:16-17. It's not going to be on the screen. I'm just going to read it here. It says, I said to myself, look, I am wiser than any of the kings who ruled in Jerusalem before me. I have greater wisdom and knowledge than any of them. So I set out to learn everything from wisdom to madness and folly. But I learned firsthand that pursuing all of this is like a chasing the wind. Even the very language that Solomon used here, he's given us an incredible clue. He's saying to you and to me, if you do all the right things, but you do them for all the wrong reasons, the meaning that could have been there for you will be like a vapor. You have this incredible expectation. I'm going to reach for it, but it's gone. You make the decision, I'm going to make church a bigger priority for myself moving into the new year, but you get into March and then all of a sudden, no, the meeting you thought was going to be there isn't there at all, right? Maybe you make the decision, maybe I'm going to start giving more to the church that I call home, whatever church that might be, and then all of a sudden you find that the expectation of meaningfulness that you thought was going to be there is missing. And so then you get discouraged. And you give up on these things that are good things that you know you're supposed to do, but it doesn't seem to bring you the satisfaction that it brings to other people. Why is that? Well, the journey that Solomon teaches us. Even here, he's saying, right here in the language, that one of the reasons why he pursued and wanted to accomplish all of these things was self-promotion. Right? This emphasis on I and me, and then comparing himself to other people, right? Solomon's giving you a clue. Solomon's saying, learn from my mistakes. These things that you're chasing after in this life, even if they're good things, if you're doing them to make yourself feel better than other people, then it's not going to be meaningful. If you're doing them to promote yourself, the meaning that you were hoping was going to be there, it's like a vapor. You reach and it's gone. Look at Ecclesiastes 1, 4 through 8. So good. Solomon, a genius. Generations come and generations go, but the earth never changes. The sun rises and the sun sets, then hurries around to rise again. The wind blows south and then turns north around it, and we're going to hold right here. And around it and goes blowing in circles. This is Solomon using nature as a metaphor to remind us that there are things in this world that are fixed, that you cannot change them. And he's using the metaphor of nature to compare it to the sovereignty of God and the order of the universe that God has established. You cannot change these things that Solomon is writing about. You're not going to change the rotation of the earth and the orbit, right? You understand? He's using this grandiose language to say to you, there are things in this life, you cannot change them. And if you try to swim upstream, you're going to live your whole life frustrated. That's what he means through all this poetic language. All right, let's go to the next one. And then he continues using nature, but the metaphor shifts, and now he's talking about the nature of the human heart. Watch what he says. Rivers run into the sea, but the sea is never full. That's the hunger inside of you for meaning that's never satisfied. Then the water returns again to the rivers and flows out again to sea. Everything is wearisome beyond description. No matter how much we see, we are never satisfied. No matter how much we hear, we are not content. This is Solomon saying to you and to me, if you do the wrong things in this life, or if you do the right things, but you're doing them for the wrong reason, it's just like what you observe in nature as the river that just seems to never get full, so it will be for your heart. That you will be thirsty, drinking out of a tablespoon when this was waiting for you and waiting for me. And this is Solomon's confession that as he gets to the end of his life, he's giving you and he's pouring out his own regret because he realized the kind of meaning that he could have had if he had not chased after folly. And then if he had done all the right things, but had done them for the right reasons, he's beginning to see that that ocean inside of him of meaning could have been overflowing with fullness and contentment, even in the midst of tragedy that he himself found in this world. Jesus echoes these same sentiments. That's why we talk about understanding the Bible in light of itself. If you've been around church for any amount of time, you're familiar with these verses, but it might be that you've never heard them in light of the book of Ecclesiastes. Listen to what Jesus says in Matthew 6, 1 and 2. He says, watch out. Don't do your good deeds publicly to be admired by others, for you will lose the reward from your Father in heaven. What reward is he talking about? I think he's talking about meaning. When you give to someone in need, don't do as the hypocrites do, blowing trumpets in the synagogues and streets to call attention to their acts of charity. I tell you the truth, they have received all the reward that they will ever get. I think Jesus is saying to you and to me, don't do the right thing for the wrong reasons. There's a reward of meaning that your soul aches to experience that's going to be like a vapor. You think it's going to be there, but that it's gone. He continues on in verses 5 and 6. When you pray, don't be like the hypocrites who love to pray publicly on the street corners and in the synagogues where everyone can see them. I tell you the truth, that is all the reward they will ever get. But when you pray, go away by yourself and shut the door behind you and pray to your Father in private. This isn't Jesus saying that public prayer is inappropriate. He's saying public prayer for a person that is trying to promote themselves should stop praying in public and start praying in private and discover what prayer is really about, which is a communion with the creator of the universe and not an opportunity for self-aggrandizement. Then your Father who sees everything will reward you, and I would say with meaning. He continues on in verses 7 and 8. When you pray, don't babble on and on as the Gentiles do. They think their prayers are answered merely by repeating their words again and again and again. Don't be like them, for your Father knows exactly what you need even before you ask him. Jesus is picking up with this sentiment that's just shouted from the rooftops in the book of Ecclesiastes, saying to you and to me, if you are doing all the right things, but you're doing it for the wrong reasons, the meaningfulness that could have been there will be absent. It'll be absent. I don't wonder if some of you that are hearing this message, whether you're in this room or part of our online community, that there's a big aha moment that's happening for you because you've been doing all of the right things, it seems to be, and leaving behind some of the things that you know that you shouldn't do, but the contentment and the feeling of enrichment is not there. And then what I would say to you is you need to begin to have a conversation with the Holy Spirit and ask him to begin to talk with you about the motivation of your heart. What is the reason behind you doing the things that you're doing? If you've got some trusted Christian friends and you're feeling a little bit disillusioned by these things that you're doing that you know should be meaningful to you, but they're not, then sit down with a trusted Christian friend and begin to have a conversation with them, because you might just find with somebody asking you the right questions that you realize it's not the things that you're doing that's not going to be meaningful. It's the reason behind your pursuit of them. Ecclesiastes 6:12 reads this way: in the few days of our meaningless lives, who knows how our days can be best spent? Our lives are like a shadow. Who can tell what will happen on this earth after we are gone? This is Solomon. He employs this literary tactic so many times through the book of Ecclesiastes that he's echoing the voice of the person who's frustrated in life because they've not found meaning. And that voice is not being echoed in Ecclesiastes to say to you and to me, and this is what it's going to be like for you. It's not echoed in the book of Ecclesiastes because it's God saying, this is also your plot in life. Everything is meaningless. The voice of that person is echoed in the book of Ecclesiastes to say to you and to me, this does not have to be your journey. This does not have to be your story. Your life can be a life that is overflowing with meaning from this day until the last. This idea of doing all the right things for the wrong reasons is one of the reasons why churches can be a dangerous place. Now let's talk about that for a minute. Let's look at Ecclesiastes 1:17. Let's go back to this. Is this my next slide I had up? Oh, I have the reference wrong, but the verse is right. So I set out to learn everything from wisdom to madness and folly. But I learned firsthand that pursuing all of this is like a chasing after the wind. This is what we talked about earlier in a message, this idea of Solomon's confession. Not only did he chase after folly, but he chased after the right things for the wrong reasons. Churches, you have to be careful about churches that you call home, right? Because unscrupulous spiritual leaders understand that there's a desire inside of you for meaning. And sometimes unscrupulous spiritual leaders begin to motivate you, right, to do the right things, but their intentions are wrong, and then all of a sudden your intentions become wrong, right? Because you're modeling your life after that. As they say, follow me as I follow Christ, right? This is what Paul talks about to the church of Corinth, which is why we say be careful who you're following, because how they're following Christ is going to trickle down to you. And there are unscrupulous spiritual leaders that they don't have healthy motivations for why they're doing what they're doing. And then all of a sudden you begin to develop unhealthy motivations for why you're doing what you're doing. And then all of a sudden you become disillusioned with your faith, right? It's a dangerous thing. That's why I started by saying this is a sacred responsibility that we have as a church. You want to be in a church where there are leaders that are doing the right things, but they're doing it for all the right reasons. For all the right reasons. Not for promoting self, not for enriching self, not for the glorification of self, but for the glorification of the one we serve, that models after the leadership style of Jesus, which was one of a servant. And if you pause just for a moment and look around, it doesn't take very long when you're in a church to understand whether or not you're in a place like that. And this is one of the reasons why it's so dangerous, is because when you become disillusioned, the risk is, and you have seen it happen, I've seen it happen, maybe it's happened to you, right? Maybe you're circling back and trying church again after walking away for a very long time because you were doing all the right things, but you were in an environment where the right things were being done for the wrong reasons. And then all of a sudden you become disillusioned with the right things. And so you even stop doing them. And then for some people, tragedy ensues. For some people, not only do they give up on doing the right things, but then they say, what difference does it make? Which is part of Solomon's story. And then you begin a headlong dive into a life of folly. I think this is one of the reasons why you see young people graduate from high school and they go off to college, or when they join the military or move away from home, and then all of a sudden they just go off the deep end. You're like, what happened to that person? I'll tell you what happened is they had spent too much of their life doing the right things, but doing it for the wrong reason. They were doing it because other people expected something of them. They were doing it because it was a requirement. Now, I'm not saying don't have standards in your home. You know that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, if you're going to have the right standards in your home, you got to make sure you're inspiring the heart of your children to understand the right reasons for those right standards. And so all of a sudden you see these young people and their life just goes off the deep end. It's because they're disillusioned with the right things, because those right things have never created a sense of meaning in their life. And now all of a sudden they're vulnerable to the temptation of this world. This is why the book of Ecclesiastes is in the Bible. This is one of the reasons why it's one of the 66 books that we're given. Is because Solomon is saying to you and to me, learn from my mistakes and immerse yourself into a community of people that's having honest conversations about meaning and meaninglessness, making sure that you're avoiding all of the wrong things, but also making sure that you're not doing the right things for the wrong reasons. I'm going to invite the worship team to come back up. It's a phrase that's going to pop up on the screen that says, in our pursuit of meaning in this life, in our pursuit of meaning in this life. I want you to envision that statement, in our pursuit of meaning in this life, because I want to read you these three statements. We will not let the failings and misguided actions of unscrupulous spiritual leaders rob us in our pursuit of meaning in this life. For some of you, that needs to be your own declaration. For some of you, you need to say, I'm not going to let what other people did or didn't do rob me of my pursuit of meaning in this life. It might be that you come into this church service, you're part of our online community, you've come into this message and you're just disillusioned with doing the right things. And what I would say to you, it's time to start over. It's time to turn the page. You've got to make a decision. You're not going to let what other people did or didn't do rob you of your pursuit of meaning in this life. We will not let our own past mistakes and failings rob us in our pursuit of meaning in this life. We will not let our own past mistakes and failings rob us in our pursuit of meaning in this life. You might say, Fred, I'm my biggest enemy at times. Maybe you're coming out of 2025 and 2026 and you're like, I've created a lot of my own mess. And what I would say is turn the page. It's time to turn the page. No matter how young you might be or whether you're further along in your journey like me, between now and however much time is promised to each of us, then I would say let's fill that with as much meaning as we can. We will not pursue all the right things for the wrong reasons in our pursuit of meaning in this life. be a part of a healthy church family, a community that's chasing after meaning and purpose with all that they are. And let your life be a lesson and a gift to others, and let their lives so be to you. I'm going to close with this verse to set up where I'm going to be going. I'll just recap it for you. It's in Matthew 3:16-17, setting up where I'm going to be going, picking up with this message on January 10th. This is the story of Jesus' baptism. And it says that when he came up out of the water, right? We're doing baptisms that day. When he came up out of the water, it says the heavens opened and the Holy Spirit descended like a dove and rested on him. And in that moment, there was this thunderous voice came out of the heavens. And I like the NIV, how it renders it, because I think it renders it best. There's three things that God speaks over Jesus. He says, "This is my son, whom I love, with whom I am well pleased. This is my son that I love, with whom I am well pleased." And I believe those three things represent to you and to me the foundation of a life that's in pursuit of meaning. That if you don't have his adoption, meaning if you've not been born into the family of God, then meaning is always going to be less for you. If you're not enjoying his affection, if you're not drinking deep of the love that God has for you, then your life is going to be less when it comes to meaning other than it could be. And then the last one, which we're going to talk about on the 10th also, is this idea of his approval. His approval and his affection are two completely different things. You're always going to have his love, but his approval is something else that we're supposed to be reaching for in this life. I want God to smile over me because I'm choosing well every day. And when you build your life around the adoption and the affection and the approval of the creator of the universe, can I just say you have created a foundation for the life that you're trying to build, for meaning to be poured out inside of you that not even the oceans of this earth can contain. That's the kind of meaning that I believe that God wants you and I to experience in this life. Stand with me. Father, I pray as we go back into this closing song that you're going to give us a meaning vision for our future. That as we look into 2026, that even if we're coming into it with despair, that we're going to enter in with hope. Even if we're coming out of 2025 with despair, we're going to enter 2026 with hope. Not because our circumstances changed, but because we know that you always have our best interest at heart. And as Ecclesiastes also talks about in the 3rd chapter, that there are seasons in this life, and some we choose and some we hope we're never going to have to pass through. That no matter what season that we might find ourselves in, that there is meaning waiting for us. Help us, Lord, to leave behind the folly, and help us to leave behind all the wrong motivation. Help us to do the right things. Help us to do the right things for all the right reasons. In Jesus' name. Come on, let's worship together.